and I'm so excited to be sharing with you some of my tricks for applique today. I did put up on the wall behind me some of the projects that I've made using our Creative 8 embroidery software, and also some of the cut files to make some of the projects. And today I started a new project just for you guys, because I just, there's so many ideas that are popping around in my head. And I saw this. I have all kinds of different fabrics and wool and different things like that. And I decided I was going to make a poinsettia project. And originally I was going to use it as a sewing project, where I was going to use some wool, like 12 weight wool thread, to go around it with a pin tuck. And then as I started putting it all together, it made me think that maybe I'd really like to be able to do part of this project as an applique and do it in embroidery, because my brain always goes back there, right? And so we're going to talk about how you can take some files, and it could be, maybe it's a drawing you have, or it could be a project that's not an embroidery file, and think about some different ways how to do it. This is actually originally, I'll hold it up here so you can see it. It was originally a cutting file for a memento, and I'll go to the website and show you the file that I'm talking about and download it and show you how to do it. And I wanted to turn it into an embroidery design, but it was not an embroidery. There was no embroidery file to go with it. And so I had to think of a way to make it happen, because we cannot convert CCM files into an SVG or, different things. So I came up with a really cool way of doing it that I think works really well, and that you could start to, if you can understand how to do this the way that I'm showing you, you can also use this if maybe you've got, a different type of drawing and you want to turn it into an embroidery. So I thought this would be a little bit different, and it's kind of a continuation of my August Facebook Live that I did. I really want you to ask questions and let me know if there's something I'm not making clear, but maybe you've got even better ideas I haven't even thought about. So this was the project that I started right now. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Aren't they beautiful? This is done on wool, and I started it in sewing. I'll pull it up a little bit so you can see. And I started doing these in sewing, and I did cut the files from the memento to make the poinsettias and the leaves for the poinsettias. And then at the very last, let me see if I'm going to put this over here and change the file for a minute. Let me see if I can change the picture and show you a little bit better. And so I kind of loved the 3D look of these petals. Let me see these petals here. And but because the wool is very loosely woven, I really need to find a way of finishing the edges of that fabric so it'll stay long term. And then you'll notice there's no center there. That's another part of the file that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do 3-dimensional. All of these little tiny dots could have been manually cut out, but I just brought in a whole bunch of different circles and cut them out on the memento. And so I kind of filled that whole project, something that might have taken me hours sitting there and cutting circles. And I thought it was a brilliant idea just to be able to fill, maybe a 6 by 6 inch space with small little circles and have them cut out while I could be doing other work. So I'm going to show you, like, start to finish, how this all worked. And I'm going to switch cameras over to my computer. And when I'm in here, I went into the Creative 8 website, and I said that I wanted to see crafting files, and I just typed in poinsettia. And what I came up with were these files here. This one here, I'll show you a little bit later on how it works. But the file that I did download was this one right here. And when you look at it, I thought this is really kind of nice. And even though it's a paper file, I still thought it actually could be really cool as a quilting file. So, often we get kind of set in our ways and we don't really think about all the different ways we can use this. But these were very easy to think about changing and making them for a sewing project, making a poinsettia. So I touched the send function, and I sent it to the Creative 8 app, and I didn't do that here, so let me do it. And then when I open up the Creative Aid app, it says, do I want to accept the file? And I say yes. Now, this file has got a lot of different levels to it. And if I go and open it up, you'll see there is 14. Now there's like 11 different pieces to it. All right. So everything is kind of separate. And if I ungroup them, I'm going to go down over here and ungroup. All right. And now they're all different levels, different designs that I can break out. So I'm going to just deselect them, and you can see all the individual pieces here. So if I wanted to cut these for an applique and turn them into a cut file and also an embroidery design, I had to figure out how I was going to do it. All right. So what I ended up doing, and this was the other file that I was working with, and I'll delete that for now, and I can go back and get that later on. Now, do you notice that? And if I zoom in a little bit here, let me close this film strip here. And if I zoom in, you'll notice that there are a lot of these lines here. The lines that you're seeing, the way that this is meant to be done with paper is these are embossing lines. So you're meant to use the embossing tool, and then it will put the fold lines in the paper, and then it will go and cut the cardboard out, the cardboard stock. So I thought, and let me just get rid of some of these extra files that we don't need in here. I thought maybe what I could do, since I wanted to create a file for embroidery, was change the file. Now, when you look at a design like that, the stitching that I've got there, I'm just going to go and touch the green one here. All right. And you'll see that there are two types of cutting files, and one of them is a cutting file and one of them is embossing. So if I were to ungroup that, the second one, all right, when I move it, you see what that looks like? That's the embossing file. So I'm going to just delete that. And what I'm left with is the cut file. Now, for my purposes to turn this into an applique embroidery, I need to change that from a cut file to a pen file. So if I go to edit, all right, and I'm going to go in here to edit, and when I see there the cut file, I want to change that, and I want to make it a pen file. All right, and now I'm going to come back out and just see if there's any questions so far of what I'm doing. And I'm going to close the film strip up for a minute. All right. So, Amy, is there any questions so far of what I'm doing?
No questions yet, Karen.
All righty. Well, guys, I want to really hear from you, okay? So what I ended up doing was to create an embroidery applique that I could use for some of these designs to have a finished edge on the applique was I went and instead of using it as a cut file, I switched all the pieces over to a pen line, and I'm going to do it. So I'm going to show you how I did that. And because I think that was really cool. And then I brought this picture. I took a picture with my phone, and then I brought that into our software, and I'm going to show you how you can turn them into an embroidery design. So isn't that fascinating? Look at that. Now, you see these little lines right here. That was something that was on the wheel that as the paper was moving up and down. So the lesson that I learned is it's good to have the wheel on the one side, but if you've got a wheel in the middle, move it over so it's going to be on the edge of your paper. And that way you won't have any, if there's anything on your wheel, you won't see that. And when you come closer, you can kind of see they're just random lines, but they're going to interfere a little bit with my picture. And so let me go. And so, Amy, no questions so far?
No questions so far.
Okay, I hope you guys are awake and understanding what I'm doing, because I'm going to come back in here in a second, all right? So I'm going to switch back over, and I've actually already created a file where I did this, and I separated out all of these lines from the embossing. And what I'm going to do is just delete this, all right? And I'm going to go and open up the file that I've already opened, that I've already created. And so I'm going to go to insert from device, and somewhere on my desktop, I've saved a file that says poinsettias pen, picture of poinsettias, paper poinsettias. Look at all these different files I have. Aren't I funny the way that I save them? All right, there is a poinsettia that was the cut files, and these are the pen files. So I'm just going to open that, and then you'll see all of it together, right? Maybe I didn't change it. Let's see. How do I know if it's going to have the pen file on it? I've got to ungroup it. All right. And I can see that was not the right one because I still can see all those different. Oh, maybe that's a leftover file here. Let me just go out. All right. And let's select. And I've got to ungroup them if they're all showing up to ungrouping it. All right. So if they're ungrouped, now they're all individual. Let me go here. And I got to detach, right? Well, apparently I saved the wrong one because there is my individual. Let me just delete that. All right. So what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to detach this one. All right. And we got plenty of time, so don't you worry. And then I can move that one. Let's see what we got here. That is this one here. So I'm going to delete that file. So all I'm really leaving is the cut files, right? And I can arrange them any way I want to afterwards. But let's go to the green one. And I need to detach that one and delete it. And now I got one more left. And I'm going to delete. So you can detach in a few different ways, right? You can go over here where it says detach, and you look at that symbol, but you also have a very easy way of doing it, which is right here. It's kind of ungrouping, and now I can just select the embossing file. All right, so now I've got all of these different files, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see my whole screen. The cardboard that I have to print on is 12 inches, a 12-inch square. So I want to fit these in so that they're going to fit in that 12-inch square. All right. So let me just move these over here and see how I can make this work. All right. And then we're going to move to the embroidery software, and I'm going to show you how you can turn this into really fantastic embroidery designs. Some of them the ones I'm going to use, I'm going to do a buttonhole stitch. And let me rotate it and see if this is going to work. Maybe this one will work that better down over here. And then I'm going to move this little guy over here. Now, I'm not trying to change the size right now because I want to show you a trick so that you can keep the size exactly the same. And then you're going to know that your applique is the right size. Now, the reality is, once I have gotten this pen marks that show me what the shapes look like, I really don't care about the actual size anymore, because when I go to my embroidery software, it is going to remake these designs, and I will also have the embroidery file, but also a new cut file that would fit it exactly perfect. All right. So let's see. I'm going to click on these designs. I'm going to edit them. I'm going to turn them into a pen mark. And you notice when I change it from a cut file to a pen mark, that all of a sudden there is no fill design in the middle. So it's not showing you fabric anymore because it's not going to cut, or it's not showing you paper or whatever you'd want to cut. It's just going to draw a line. And so that's why it's not showing you the fills inside of the shapes anymore. All right, I've got one more to do, this guy up here. All right, there it is. And it turned them all into one color. So it's going to use the pen to color all these lines in all at one time. If I wanted to, I could go in and draw a separate color, but I have no need to for what I want to do. So now what I'm ready to do is go to the machine, and I'm going to send it to the machine. And I'm going to choose the 12 by 24 matte, landscape matte. and I'm going to choose my material. And in this case, I'm going to say it's cardboard. All right, not foam. It really doesn't matter too much because the pen is going to be doing the work. Okay, I'm going to do cloth cardstock heavy. All right, and then I'm going to continue. And it shows me on the left the 3 different files. And I don't want to rearrange. I want to keep them all exactly where they were. And you notice that it broke it up into 3 different fabrics. Now let's see if I go next. It's going to, oh, wait a second. It went and rearranged it. I don't want to rearrange. So I'm just going to do that. The one that I've chosen here like this. And I'm going to choose next. And I've got to put the pen in. So I'm going to switch over my camera. And I'm going to move this poinsettia. Whoops, daisy here. Excuse my back. I'm going to switch over here like this. All right. And you have on your pens a thicker pen or a thinner pen. I used the thick line because I thought it would be easier to digitize with. The thinner pen mark might not give me the definition I want. So I'm going to use the thicker one. And I'm going to put it here like this. And I'm going to snap it in place. And then I'm going to come back over and I will switch back to here. I usually, when a pen is new, I will put a little less pressure on it. So the force, I'm going to move it down to 470, because when a pen is new, it's got a nice thick felt. As the pen wears down, you might think you need to go back up a little bit higher where it recommends. But I often find going down a little bit is pretty good for it. And then when I touch continue, it's going to be ready to cut, and then I'll switch back over here. All right. So when I touch start cutting or start, it's not going to cut. It's going to just draw the line and see the pen's going to come over. How cool is that? Isn't that amazing? See, I can hear that the pen is really going down quite strong. So I probably could have even used less force than that. I probably would use 460 the next time, because I can hear the pen really coming down very hard on the paper. Although it's going to give me a nice crisp line, that's going to work out really well for me.
Karen, while that's drawing, can we ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely. Let me come back.
All right. So somebody wants to know why you're not just cutting. Why are you drawing instead? What's the purpose behind that?
Because what I want, I've already done the cutting, right, for the parts that I sewed on, and I used the pin stitch to sew them on. But now I want to turn this into an embroidery design. I don't want it to be only cutting. I want to have a finished edge so that I can make some 3-dimensional poinsettias. And to do that and make it an embroidery, I need to have the embroidery file to go with the cut file. But that was not the way the design was made. And so this is my trick to be able to create an embroidery file from a cut file that didn't exist before this. All right. And for many of us that are embroiderers, we might see that poinsettia and think, well, that's beautiful, but it's not an embroidery design. I'm not going to use it. I want to show you how we can use our Creative 8 software to be able to create designs. Or maybe you've got some kind of an applique design or a quilt design that is not an embroidery design, but you want to turn it into an embroidery design. That is what you're going to be able to do here. When you see the next step, I'm going to take these drawings and I'm going to open up digitizing, and I'm going to turn these into instant appliques with an embroidery file and a cut file that's going to be perfectly sized. And that's the cool thing about this. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I think you answered it. Somebody asked if you were starting with an SVG file, but you're starting with the CCM file.
Yeah, it's a CCM file, and we cannot take a CCM file and convert it to an SVG. So this is my way to get around it. And I actually think it's genius in a way, because once you start thinking like this, you can take any pattern, right? Any applique pattern. It could be of a dog or it could be anything. And you can create an applique design because I was able to do, able to get the drawing. Now, if you've already got a pattern that exists, you don't need to go through this step of drawing the pen lines so that you can use it. But if it is a cut file coming from Creative 8 or anywhere else for that matter, and it's not an applique, then you can convert this over really, really quickly. Okay, watch and see how fast this is. Any other questions?
One more question here. Somebody wants to know, instead of drawing that out, could you take a screenshot and use the screenshot from,
well,
to
if
use
you take a screenshot, if you take a screenshot from the software, you've got all these other things you got to deal with, right? So let me go back. You've got the grid lines, and you've got the ruler, and you've got all that kind of stuff. Now you can turn the grid off, I believe, but it's not to scale. What I'm doing here, this is to scale. So when I bring this image in, I'm going to say that this picture is a 12 by 12 inch image. And so each of these items is going to be to scale. So I know that it's going to fit in perfectly and keep the same size. Whereas if you take a screenshot on my computer, that's not to scale. And it could get a lot more complicated when you're trying to make sure that the sizes of the pieces are actually perfect. Sorry. So any other questions that came from that?
I think you're good to go.
But look at how clear these lines are, right? Isn't that amazing? This was another design that I did that I was going to be using. And the little circles here, I ultimately decided instead I was just going to make my own circles. So instead of using those, they were a little tiny. I wanted them to be a little bigger. So I went and I created them on in the files. Now, when I come back, it's all cut, right? And I've got these ones here done. I'll just, wait a second here. Project the mat. So look at how nice and firm those lines are. Isn't that beautiful? And so when you're going to go and you're going to make an embroidery design, this is going to be really, really easy to make a very good embroidery design. Okay. So I'm coming back to my computer and I'm going to close this down. And what I did, and I guess I'll do it like this. What I did was I went to my photos. I took a picture of the exact screen, right? And I took a picture of it and then I sent it to my computer. Everybody does it a little bit different. I usually send it to my email and then I'll download it from there. Some people, you can connect your phone and send it directly. A lot depends upon your phone. I have an old phone, so some phones have better and easier ways of doing things. However, to send the picture to your computer, that's all that really matters of that. All right. So I opened it up on my email and I saved it on my desktop. And so now when I come back to my computer, all right, I'm going to close this down and I'm going to open up my embroidery software. All right. And there's my embroidery software. And I'm going to load it up. I'm going to go to digitizing. Now, there's a few different ways that you can bring in images into the background. All right. And I'm going to go to a blank canvas. I'm not really worried too much about what the size hoop is because I'm going to go into digitizing. So when I go to create, and then I go to digitizing, and I could wait for it to finish, and a little pop up with a little wizard. I'm just going to wait for a second here. But one of the things that when you're doing this type of thing and you're creating an applique design from an actual picture, like all the ones behind me, I did not bother creating images for. I basically created the applique right in the digitizing screen, and I just kind of clicked. And because a lot of times when I would go to the draw window and I would kind of create the design, that's where all the time was involved. And I figured if I'm going to spend all this time in the draw window, I might as well just go right into the digitizing window and create them there, because I can change everything up just as quickly. And I end up saving a lot of time by doing this. But if you're not sure what the image you want is, by bringing in a drawing or something like that, it does all the work for you. Okay. So I'm going to come back and I'm just going to close this down. All right. and the digitizing window opened up right here. And when I look at this, I have choices. If I wanted to load or create a background picture, which I do, I'm going to choose next. And then I'm going to go load the picture that I saved on my desktop. And I usually always save it on my desktop because that way I can find it. And then I try and clean up my desktop afterwards. Now there's actually 2 images in here. This one, do you notice that this was kind of got another image superimposed on that? And I didn't really pay attention to that when I was printing it. So when I loaded that design, I just brought that into, we could have brought it into our software and cleaned it out. And, or we could bring it into the paint window or anything else you want to. In the draw and paint window, you can go and trim that and clean that up. And I really wasn't, you'll notice there's still a little bit up here. I don't really care too much about that because I wanted to show you how you fix those kind of things. Sometimes we get so into perfection that we don't actually accomplish anything. And so I usually will just leave something like that and I'll fix it later on. Now, when I touch next, this is where you can crop it, but I don't want to crop it because this is the 12 by 12 inch image. So, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to change the hoop because what I want to do is I want to enter my own hoop size. And I think that 12 inches is around 305. Let me just go here. Yeah, look at that, 12.01. So I'm going to make the size of my image the size of my paper. So that's going to keep the size of my designs consistent, which I think is pretty cool to be able to do something like that. And then I can touch finish. All right, now there it is. And I'm in the digitizing screen. And the fantastic thing about this is I can use the quick create to make my appliques. It'll only take me like 30 seconds or less to turn these all into an applique design. Anybody have any questions, Amy?
No questions about this.
All righty. So up here in quick create, if I wanted to put a pattern fill, like maybe I wanted to put some different types like a motif fill or some radiant or spiral stitches, but I don't want that. So I'm just going to deselect it and turn it off. I do want to turn the applique on. So I'm going to just select applique. And for now, we're going to leave it a satin line. I'll show you afterwards how we can change it up into a blanket stitch or different types of stitches. But for now, I'm going to do that. All right. Now, there is a hole in the middle of this, but I don't really want the hole to be there. If I wanted to include the hole, I would choose quick stitch and auto hole. But I'm not really worried about that smaller hole in the beginning, in the middle. And I want a little more stability into that center area. So I'm not going to cut that. So I'm going to quick stitch. But I know that when I do this, I'm usually going to want to be a little bit closer. So I zoom in first. I'm going to touch quick stitch. And then when I drag it and it comes onto the line, I should be able to connect with the design. Now, do you know this? I love this color tolerance line. This actually helps you to move the applique digitized design that I'm creating into all the outside edges of that particular design and the drawing. Okay. So right now you don't see the line. When I drag it like this, let me see if I can see where I'm not sure I've actually connected with it. So let me try that again. All right. And it looks like it's doing it. Ah, look at that. So do you notice right now? I hope you can see this. There's a green and a red line that is going around the drawing on the screen, okay? If I come back and the tolerance was down at 0, oftentimes it might not be there. And if I don't see that yellow and, the green and pink dotted line, then by moving the color tolerance, it pushes it so that it'll do the whole design. If I keep going to the other end, it'll actually push it. It's not digitizing the actual poinsettia piece. It's actually putting that line around the whole screen, which is not what I want. But this is very valuable, and I use this all the time. So I'm bringing it about halfway, all right? And it's going to kind of push that line out into the crevices to make sure it gets everything. And when I touch OK, it creates my applique. And look at how nice that design is. To see how I got some good points up here and over here. If you look at the design, and I can zoom out a little bit so you can see that. Next, I'm going to do this design right here. Now, you can see the tool is ready to go, right? On my mouse. I should have changed the color of my mouse, I guess. But that's showing me that it's ready to create another digitized design. If I want to turn that off and not do an applique, I'm going to need to right click. So right now I'll right click and I've turned that command off. And now you can see the nodes for the designs that I've made. Now, if I look at this area up here and I look at this node, I can see when I'm looking at the node that it's round. If I wanted a nice sharp point to my poinsettia, I can touch the shift key and look at how much nicer that is, right? So those are easy things to fix after the design is made, but using the quick design command, quick create command, is a very fast and easy way of making some excellent appliques without having to do a whole lot of work. So I'm going to go back to quick stitch and I'm going to select the next one that's right next to it. And right now you don't see there's a green and red or pink lines around it, right? Look how I changed the color tolerance, how that happens. Can everybody see that, Amy, on the screen?
Yes,
it's
sure visible on the screen. Yep.
Okay. So now that I see it's going over the whole design, I touch OK. And there's the next one done. So literally in 10 seconds, I can create all these into an applique. Same thing. I don't see that blotted line. So, oh, look at how nice that is. Touch OK. And then I'm going to zoom out and come back in and zoom over here for my last one. All right. Now I got to turn the command on because when I went to zoom in, it lost the command. And now I'm going to do that one and touch OK. So these are now all applique designs. Oh, look at this one. This one's made, but I don't see that it's an applique. I wonder what happened to that one. So I'm going to right click here and select this one. And when I right click, I'm going to go over to applique and I want to tell it that it's going to be a pre-cut piece. All right. Because all of these I want to be pre-cut. So when I click on them, I'm going to go to the applique file and select that I want to pre-cut it. And then I'm going to show you how you'll get those files for the memento. So there's applique pre-cut. Now, as I'm going in there, that's our nature, is we tend to go in there quickly, right? But there's actually a couple other things we should think about. Do we want a margin? Do we want the piece to be a little bit bigger? And if you're cutting this for an exact file, normally you would switch this to 0 instead of having the applique placement margin at 1. That's going to leave a little extra fabric that goes beyond the first stitching line. All right. And I'm going to also match the placement line because I think that gives us the best result. Okay. So as I come back, I can make those changes. And you notice it doesn't keep the changes that you make. You've got to manually go in and select match placement line. And then I'll go to this last one here. And then I'm going to go to applique. And then I can choose pre-cut. I'm going to change the applique margins to 0. And then I'm going to change and match the placement and touch OK. Now, here up in this corner, I'm going to zoom up here. Remember when there was that extra line that I didn't want? There was extra lines on the drawing that I didn't want. So I kind of got a little bit of a funky look to this. All right. I'm going to just delete a couple of these nodes. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Look at this. Do you see those lines? That's why you got such a funky corner, because I didn't clean that up. Now, if you accidentally make a mistake and you delete something you want, you don't have to go back and create it again. All you have to do is go up to the top and touch undo, and it comes back. So now what I want to do is I'm touching this node, okay, and on the home page, I'm going to go back to the home page, and edit nodes is there. If I wanted to delete some nodes, I can touch delete and delete a couple of the nodes. All right. And when I come back to edit, if there was something that wasn't exactly perfect where I wanted it to be, I can shift them around. The one that I want to be a nice sharp point is this one. So I'm going to hold the shift key down and click on that. All right. And this one I don't really want to be a sharp point. So I can kind of move it aside just to see what it looks like and see what the picture is underneath there like that. And if I don't like a shape, I can recreate it and make it something different too. So it's totally up to me what this looks like. At this point, I'm on the home page. And if I wanted to save these files for an SVG file to cut, and also for the embroidery files, there are these options up here, but I kind of like to see what I'm doing in English. So I always go to File, and then I'm going to export the applique pieces. I'm going to save them as an SVG file, and then I'm going to export it. And then let's say I'm going to put them on my desktop. I will call this poinsettia. And then this is 2 mm satin. Because maybe I want to save these in different ways. And then I'll touch save. All right. Those are the files. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export it. And I'm going to export it. You can export it as a VP3 or a VP4, depending upon what machine you have. Some machines read VP4, but let's say we're saving it for everybody. Save it as a VP3. And then I do the same thing, and I'll call it the same thing. Poinsettia 2 mm. And then I'll leave it like that. And then I'll just choose export. And so now I have the embroidery file and I have the cut file. There's one other thing you should always do if you want to be successful when you're digitizing is save the EDO file. And this is something I often forgot in the beginning, but an EDO file will let me bring this drawing back in with all the embroidery files there, and then I could change them. So if I go to save, this is how I save it as an EDO file, and I'll call it the same thing, poinsettia. And I think I called it 2 mm, and that's what I'm going to call it. And so now it's saved. So the value in saving the EDO file is, let's say that after I did the embroidery file and I had the satin stitch, and then I decided that I really wish that I'd made a file that had the blanket stitching because I like that better. If I had not saved the EDO file, then it's not easy for me to go back and switch out the last stitch to a blanket stitch. You can do it in Stitch Creator. You can do it in some different ways, but all of those take 10 times longer than just opening up an EDO file and changing that last stitch. And so for me, I think it's really valuable. And the other thing is, even more important than that, maybe you had all these files that were the size you wanted them to be, and then you decided later on that you wanted to make a massive poinsettia for a pillow. Well, the EDO file, I can open it up in digitizing, and I can change that size to anything I want to, and it'll automatically give me the perfect stitch out for whatever size I change. Whereas once you start doing that in Stitch Creator and everything, I don't think it's quite as accurate as when you open up the EDO file, it's like you're starting a brand new digitized design, and it's going to be perfect for the size that you make it for. So there's a lot of really good reasons to be saving that EDO file. And I would tell you half the time I forget, and I kick myself every time. So if there's one thing I can stress is make sure to save that EDO file, because I think you'll find it's a time saver in the end. All right, let's see. Amy, any questions?
Yes, we have a couple questions. Somebody would like to know, and I think it's just you reiterating that you cannot turn a .ccm file into an SVG, but you can turn an SVG into
Absolutely.
a CCM file. Okay.
I'm going to show you how to do it too. because
Awesome.
it's a little bit different. But that is exactly right. Right now, and I stress right now, right? You guys know how much they've been adding into our software. You know how much we've been adding into both the cutting and the quilting software. We know that they are working on things for our embroidery software, and we have asked them to be able to have that ability to turn a CCM file into an SVG. But right now, that's not possible. And I say this out loud in the hope that somebody is listening and maybe they will move it out faster, but there's no guarantees, right? I'm not a horse whisperer. They don't do anything I tell them. So let's hope that some point in the future that will be possible. But right now, this is a really good workaround, and it actually gets you to use your features in your software really pretty cool. So I'm going to go and open up the file I just made. Now, the nice thing about what I just did is, if, for example, maybe I didn't get the size absolutely perfectly, right? And or maybe I thought I did, but I really thought instead of the 12-inch paper, maybe it was 10-inch, and I put it in there incorrectly. Well, because I brought it into digitizing and I created those applique files, there is new cutting files that go with those embroidery designs. And so even if the original file isn't exactly the same size, it really doesn't matter, because now I have brand new cut files to go with the appliques that I just made. So when you're looking at the designs behind me, most of those designs were made exactly where I didn't bring in a drawing, but I did literally go and click the shapes to get the shapes exactly the shape I wanted them to. And then I created all the files, and then I exported the applique pieces to be able to cut. The one that's the flower one that's over here, that was one I did in designs in machine embroidery. It was a September edition a few years ago, and it was before we even had a cutting machine. And it was how to use our software to create cut files for it. And I was so excited to do that because not only was it the first time we really started looking at cutting our embroidery with our appliques and embroidery software, but it's really amazing where we've come in the years. And now we even have our own cutting file that's really excellent at cutting fabric. Now, when I'm doing these wool files, normally when I'm cutting calico and let's see what time it is. Oh, we got time. When I'm cutting cotton fabric and batiks and stuff like that, I do not usually use any kind of a fusible on the back of it. And our Memento is fabulous for that. So we don't really need to do that. There are some times when you want to be able to fuse something. Maybe it's you don't want to have any extra fabric outside the border, and you want to place it right inside of that applique outline. Then you're probably going to use a fusible for that, because you're going to need to have it stuck down and held in place, because there's not going to be an extra file that's going to stitch double around that. The other time that I think sometimes is worthwhile is a fabric like wool tends to be very loosely woven. Do you see this? And so the threads just come off really, really easy. And when you're working with a fabric like that, putting a fusible on the back of it gives you a lot more support for those edges, especially if you decide you want to use a blanket stitch for that last stitch out. If you're going to use a blanket stitch and the particular wool that you're using is very loosely woven, you're probably going to be sorry you didn't use it. All right. Every wool is different. Here's a green wool. Some of them are very, very densely felted, and then many others are not. And if you can pull a fiber off like this one here, I'm pulling a fiber off like that, and I can see, look at how big those fibers are. I don't know if I can even see it. Okay. But if they're going to come off that easy, then the likelihood once you go to do the blanket stitches, you're going to need to use a very wide blanket stitch, and you're going to need to make sure that the stitches are close together to really hold those loose fibers together. By placing something on the back, whether it's steam a seam or heat and bond light or whatever it is, even if you're not using it necessarily to fuse it in place, it's going to keep the fibers together and stop them from separating as you're stitching it. And I'll pull up the one that I did, because when my intention is I'm going to stitch most of this applique in sewing, and only those last few pieces that are on the top, the poinsettia pieces, I'm going to do them in embroidery and with a wash away stabilizer. Aqua Magic is my favorite. And then I'm going to do a blanket stitch around the edge. So it's going to look like it's hand stitched, but because I'm doing it in embroidery, it's going to anchor all those edges together. And if I was doing this in sewing and trying to be on the very edge of the fabric, it may not cooperate as much because there's not as much firmness to it. By doing it in embroidery, it makes it super easy, and it'll give it the look of a hand stitching that I'm looking for. So I'm going to switch back to my computer again. Amy, any questions?
You're good to go. We're good.
All righty. All right. So I'm going to close down this digitizing screen, and I'm going to go back to my Creative 8 page. And let me get rid of, these are just the pen lines, remember, because there's no applique showing. And I'm going to go and load or insert. So you can do things in different ways. If I go up to File, there's an insert here from Device. And there's also, if I come down below, Insert from Device, Insert from Vault. Most of the time in our software, both our crafting and quilting and our embroidery software, there's usually 2 or 3 ways of doing the same thing. There's not really a right or a wrong way, whichever way you prefer. So I like to show you a couple of different ways so you can find what you're looking for. I'm going to go from the device. And, you know, I think I saved it on my desktop. Let's go find out. All right. So I've got my digitized poinsettia. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for a CCM file, right? Poinsettia. There's the 2mm satin. Let's load that one. Now, do you notice it saved every file individually? It didn't save them all as one file. When I went to export the applique pieces, each one of them has its own individual file, which is kind of good because maybe I don't want them all to be a cut file, or maybe I want to change the colors and do things a little differently with each one. So right now it's set up as print and cut. Remember, this is an SVG file. I could use it as a background, but that's not what I want. I want to convert it to a cut path. And then when I say okay, it brings it in, and now it's a cut file. Now I can do that for each individual one, but maybe I want this file. I'm going to go to edit it. The material color is gray, and I'm not a big gray fan, so I'm going to change it to pink and then say okay. And now I could, if I want to, duplicate it and have many of them on there, because maybe this one file, I need 8 of these poinsettias. So when you're doing this kind of thing, if you're doing a larger project, the reason they didn't group it all together is they're not assuming that you want one of each of those files. So it's a lot easier to control if when you export them, each file is separate. If I wanted them all to come in and cut all one piece for the whole thing, I would bring them all in individually. But there's often when we're working on these projects, we might want 8 of this one applique piece and only 4 of another. And so you've got more control by bringing them individually like this and filling the what is this called? Amy, I forgot what it's called. The screen, the mat, the cutting area, I guess will do it. So I hope that makes sense, and I will just fit them in there where I want. You can also get use the multiplying tool, and it will multiply them and place them in there. But when you've got a design that this is kind of offset and you've got lots of little indents and stuff, it's just as fast for me to go in and put them where I want them to be. So let's see, Amy, any other questions?
No, I don't think so. There are probably no. I'm not seeing any questions on here. A couple of comments about the steps to do all of that stuff, but I think you'll go in and look at those afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards, I'm going to come back and I'll look at all your questions, and I will make sure to answer any questions you have, but I hope you're getting a sense of how easy this is. Now, the last thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go back to my embroidery software, and I'm going to change that file from a satin stitch to a blanket stitch, because I think that's important if you want to do that. And did I close out my embroidery software, the digitizing, or not? I guess we're going to find out, right? So let me go back to my computer. All right. And I'm going to open up my embroidery software. Look at that. I've closed it all out, right? So if I wanted to go back and open it up, because I need to change that file, I'm going to go to digitizing, and I'm going to open up. Now, right now it's saying, do I want to do an embroidery? Do I want to do a trace, express border, create a background picture, or load an existing design? Now, if I load an existing design, notice it shows you EDO, right? And that means that's where you go if you want to open up an EDO file. And when I touch next, I should be able to find that file on my desktop. And let's see what it shows me here. Oh, look at that. There's my file. When I touch to open it, it's bringing it in. And there is my embroidery file ready to make changes to. Isn't that cool? So see the value of that EDO file. Now, I could also go and insert it. If I had my digitizing screen open and I wanted to insert it, I could do it that way. So there's many, many different ways of opening an EDO file. But if you want to open up an EDO file from that wizard, that is where you do it. Now, I want to make another little comment here, because many of you have different levels of software. Not all of you have the top level. But what I want you to know is, in that essential level, it used to be previously called silver. The essential level, they have added the draw and paint window, and also, I believe, basic digitizing. Isn't that right, Amy?
I believe you are correct. Basic digitizing, meaning the wizard.
Right. So if I wanted to create the file like that, a simple applique, when I'm in this wizard, instead of going, when I want to create something from a drawing, I could go and open up the picture and bring it in and create an applique automatically. The limitation is you have no ability to adjust it. If you don't like where the points are or how it filled in a space, if you have that essential level, you cannot change any of those. And, you know, realistically, as the better we get and the more we tend to use our embroidery software, very few of us are going to be happy with having that limitation. But it's a good way to learn it and to use it, right? So if you've got just that essential level, you can do exactly what I just did without problems. You're going to use the wizard to do it. It will walk you through. You'll select the applique. You're going to say what kind of stitch you want, and then you will create an applique just at that basic level of essentials. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it, that you could get a membership for, if you go through your dealer, for $8 a month. It works out because you get 2 months free. For $8 a month, you can be creating your own appliques. And so for any of you that have that level, I really encourage you to go and do this. And I will show you in the couple of minutes we have left, I'll show you how to do it, okay? Because I want you to know how to do that, because I think it's really, really valuable. Some people think that you need to have the highest level of a software to do embroidery software, but at the level of the essential and extra and the highest level, you all can do a basic digitizing. And that's so important. And once you get going with it, you get better. And that's only going to be exciting for all of us. So make sure you give this a try no matter what level of software you have, okay? Okay, I'm changing my camera up again. And that's the wrong camera. There you go. All right, so when I have my design in here, I just clicked on the stitching. All right. And when I click on the stitching, you can see the notes. Now, if I wanted to change all of my stitching, I could go over on the left and I could touch the control button, select all of them. And then when I right click and go to properties, I can go to the applique line. Whoops, right up here, satin line. And instead of a satin line, I'm going to go to a motif line. And I have all kinds of options. I've got universal stitches, Husqvarna Viking stitches, and fob stitches. If I just stick in universal and then I could make that last stitch a bean stitch. How fantastic is that? I'm going to go to hand stitches and I'm going to go to this one right here. And I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see what's happening. And then I can touch OK. And look at that. They all change. Now they look kind of funky, don't they? Do you know why they look funky? Because they're kind of going in the wrong direction. So let me just zoom in here like this. I'm going to right click on this one here. All right. And I'm going to now just go individually and change one of them. If you get a result like that, that's why you have these options like mirror image, right? And if I touch apply, now it corrects it. Now you notice when I first did this and I had all the global properties for all of them selected, the apply button wasn't allowing me to select it so I could see it before closing down. But if you go and you select one design at a time, then you can touch apply and you can make your changes. Like maybe I don't want the blanket stitch to be as wide. So I'm going to change it to 3 millimeter. And then I'm going to touch apply and I'm going to see the changes that are happening. When I think I like what I've got, then I can touch OK. All right. And then I'll click off of it so you can see what it looks like. Wouldn't that be pretty to do that as a nice finished stitch? Now, the other thing I could do is I could create a brand new line of stitches if I wanted to add them. And I could come back in to go to quick create. This time I don't want a satin line. I don't want a pattern fill. I don't want an applique. What I want is just a motif line. Okay. And I'm going to do quick stitch. And I'm going to click on that and come around and make it a little, oh boy, I got a funky thing going on here, right? So I'm going to pull that back a little bit. It's not staying close to the line that I had. So I'm going to have to find another way of doing that because that was not successful. So I'm going to undo that. But you'll remember undo and redo is fabulous. All right. I'm going to come over here to this one. And now if I wanted to make a change to this one, I right click and I'm going to go choose a motif line. And this time I'm going to choose a different one. Let's say I choose this. I have no idea what this is going to look like. Well, that is not going to look so nice because see that it's got a stitch inside and a stitch outside. And if I was appliquing this directly to the fabric, it could be kind of cool, but that's not what I want to do. I want to make a freestanding applique. So I need all the stitches to be inside my poinsettia. So I'm going to go back and this time I'm going to choose a bean stitch. All right. So I'm coming back up to universal and there's my bean stitch. And then I'm going to touch apply. And the bean stitch is stitching right on that edge. So I'm going to touch OK. And now when you click off, you'll see what it looks like. So I might want this to be sitting really on the edge of my fabric if I was going to do this. But we'll see what happens. But before I leave, because we're almost out of time now, 2 minutes. I told you I would show you how to do this if you have silver. I'm going to close this screen down. I'm going to close all of it down. And the last thing I'm going to show you is how you would do this if you have the version of silver, all right, or the essentials, all right. So I'm opening up Create Embroidery. And I think I can change out and go to demo mode. I'm going to go to the silver subscription. And I hope I've got the update in here to show me. All right. And I'm going to go to a blank canvas. And I will touch OK. And under Create, I got Express Design. And under Express Design, I can make it the size of the hoop or into a rectangle. Let's make it the hoop. And here, if you want to make an applique, you're going to create express border and then touch next. And then you're going to load the picture. And let me see what I got here. And let's say I bring in this design here. Will it let me do that? Yep, there we go. And then I'm going to touch next. And then I'm going to touch next. And it doesn't see the picture very well. So I take this slider bar. You notice that? When it didn't see the picture, that's showing me it's not seeing the color very well of the image. So by taking this slider bar and moving it, it allows me to see the image very good. And now my computer can understand what it looks like. Now when I touch next, it's going to create it in whatever size hoop I select. So if I want it to be larger or smaller, I can change the hoop. And let's say I want to make the hoop 240 by 150. It will bring it in and make it that size. Now when I touch next, there's my image. Here's where I have choices. I can do a satin line. I can do a running stitch, a double stitch, a triple stitch, or a motif fill. And then if I choose a motif fill, I can come in to the stitching options, and I have the same options in here to choose the stitches that I want. Let me go to hand stitches, and I'm going to go and do the blanket stitch. I know that I need to mirror image it probably. All right. And if I touch apply, it's not active. So I got to touch OK. And now it's going to do that. Look at that. How beautiful. Isn't that amazing that you can do that with that level? And you can also change your color of fabric if you want to. All right. Or take the fabric away. And now I'm going to down here, if you want to change the thread color, you can do it. And now I'm going to touch finished. And there's my applique that I created with the essential or silver level. Isn't that amazing? You know, like I think some of you that might have that essential level don't realize how many valuable things that you have in that level of software. You have over 258 fonts. You've got all those super designs, and you have basic digitizing. So you can do this type of thing to make embroidery applique designs with your Memento. So I hope that that makes many of you excited to go and try. Remember, this video is going to be showing. It's going to show up in the on YouTube. It's also going to be posted for a month on the Facebook. And you can always send me a private message on my Facebook page. It's Karen Loves to Quilt and Sew. I'd be happy to hear from you. Or if you decide to try one of these designs and stitch it out, send me a picture. I would love to see it. Post it on the My Sewnet Facebook page too, because other people would really love to see that you've actually gone in and given it a try. Let's just double check with Amy. Any other questions, Amy?
No other questions, just lots of thank yous and excitement about trying new things. Woohoo.
Oh, wonderful. I hope you give it a try. And remember, those videos are there for you to use anytime. Do we have any information about when the next Facebook Live is for My Sewnet, Amy?
You know what, Karen? I don't think we do right now. So
keep
your eyes peeled for it.
Keep your eyes peeled, and they'll post a link to the next one. But I know I've got other things coming up in the future. I'll go in and answer all your questions. And thank you for joining me. I hope you're excited to give something new a try, because there's nothing nicer than to be able to do all these fabulous cuts on our Memento and make embroidery designs that are our own special applique designs that are unique to you. So have some fun with it. Give it a try and let me know if you've got any questions. So I hope to see you again soon. I'm signing out right now, but I will talk to you again very soon.